Welcome into the draft profile for Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas and the fastest wide receiver at the NFL Combine. He flew with a 4.29 40-yard dash. And yeah, I mean, I will say right off the bat, I don't think he ran that fast on film, but we'll talk about that a little later. I do want to set up this conversation a little different, so I'm going to bury the lead. I'm going to give you my rankings for Matthew Golden in comparison to the rest of the wide receiver class, just so I can kind of have a more in-depth conversation in this video. And I'm just going to leave Travis Hunter out of this conversation, so don't even include this. But my top three receivers are in a tier of their own for me, and that is Tat McMillan still at the number 1 spot, Matthew Golden, who we're going to talk about today, at the number 2 spot, and Luther Burden at number 3. And the reason I wanted to say that I have them all kind of in a clump of, tier 1 wide receivers in this class is because I do see it that way, but I do think they're all very different receivers, right? Like Luther Burden is a slot master, right? He's going to be the best slot receiver in this class. A team that's looking for that skill set is going to value Luther Burden over these other two. If you're looking for just the absolute freak in a Tat McMillan for the size that he is and the way that he moves, yeah, you're going to go Tat McMillan. I think he probably maybe has the most upside. I don't know. I think Matthew Golden has a lot of upside too. And then Matthew Golden being just the all-around great, probably wide receiver 1 on a lot of teams, but like I probably prefer him if you could just get him in as like a wide receiver 2. For instance, if the Texans drafted Matthew Golden in the first round, just out of the blue, Texans, they got Nico Collins as the number 1. He would still be the number 1. Nico Collins is a special talent. Matthew Golden would be an incredible complement to that. So hopefully that kind of makes sense of the way I see those three guys and the way I think Matthew Golden fits in that picture, right? So I'm not going to falter anybody for saying that Golden's the best. I'm not going to falter anybody for saying Tat's the best. I'm not going to falter anybody for entering Travis Hunter into this conversation and messing up the whole thing. I just didn't. So I wanted to give that kind of context because I feel like that's going to frame the entire conversation of who Matthew Golden is as a player. A little bit of a long intro to get into the skill chart here, but let's go ahead and look at the chart. So first thing we got to talk about when we look at this skill chart as a whole, I want to obviously mention athleticism and explosiveness. If you watch these videos and you know how I do my rankings, a 7 and above is what I consider an elite score, whatever that means to you. That's kind of like a line of demarcation for how I look at these prospects. And I did not give Matthew Golden an elite score for athleticism or explosiveness, which obviously are two different things, but they correlate. And I think some people are going to have questions about that, so I want to get at that out of the way. The way I grade my players, I have a system that accounts for all of the athletic data that I can bring in. It accounts for what I see on film, and it merges the two, right? So that's how I do my grades. So Matthew Golden is the 40 time is getting accounted. It doesn't get accounted for at a very high mark, but I account the 40 time, and then I also account an athletic testing grade as well. So with that said, I personally just did not see 4.3 speed on film when I watched Matthew Golden. He just, that's not his play speed. This was a circumstance where he studied for the test and he passed with flying colors. He's an athlete. He's a great athlete. He's up there. And I would sit here and tell you maybe that's a little too low. I just felt, I watched him play and I didn't think those were the skills, like those weren't the most impressive parts of his game to me. They're a really good part of his game. I'm calling him a first-round pick, so they better be, but I found that the best parts of his game was his body control, his contact balance, his ability to work through contact during the route, his ability to adjust to the ball on the sidelines. All of those things were really, really special to me and were things that I just held in higher regard. I'm trying to kind of differentiate a little bit and give you guys a little bit of context for the way I look at these guys. So with that very long explanation out of the way, we'll move right along to route running. Route running is one of his lower grades. I do think he has all the traits to be a great route runner in the league. I want to state that out first, as this is one of my lower grades. It's still a positive grade. I think he's fine, but I think there's a lot of room to improve personally. I think I just need more urgency in the routes is the best way I could put it in layman's terms. It was never as crisp as I felt like it could be at times. And yeah, this is one of those things. I'm not super worried about it. I don't personally think I would change his, if I was in in the NFL room, if I was putting up my big board, it wouldn't bring him down one iota for me, mainly because I'm just not scared of coaching. Like, he's going to get into an NFL locker room around NFL wide receivers, and he's going to understand that it's every route every time, and it has to be level 10 intensity every time. I think that's literally all it is. I can kind of say the same thing for release. All of those were the same kind of conversation for me. And really, other than that note, I look at this skill chart as a whole, and I don't see a ton of holes in his game. I really don't. I think there's absolutely things you can work on. I can nitpick things here and there, but we're getting really in the weeds if we start, really diving into little things that I think ultimately are just coaching points at the next level, like things that he's going to improve on and get better with. So I try not to overanalyze certain things like that. Like, I think you're a day one first round caliber player, and then on top of that, I think you have a ton of room to improve. So with that said, we'll kind of bounce around here real quick before we finish up with the skill chart. Separation is a good conversation at 6.1, another great grade for me. Does it in a variety of different ways. Obviously, he can create separation with his athleticism, his explosiveness. He's going to run by you. He can do that at a high level. Obviously, we know that. But also, his ability to create space out of breaks is really good. I like his ability to break down and change direction. All of those things are plus for me. And the only reason I cut and change the direction at 5.7 isn't maybe as high as I would like is because that kind of goes back to the route running conversation. I did feel like it's not as crisp at times, and it's not as maybe as urgent at times. It's not consistent, like I said, and that's, again, not one of those things that I'm super worried about. I think this guy is an all-around really, really good prospect. I think you can play him pretty much anywhere on the offense, and he's going to excel. I think this guy can be a target hog. I think you can target him 7-8 times a game, and you're going to be happy about that. Really, I'm incredibly excited to see how good this guy can get. Overall, that is my thoughts on Matthew Golden. I mentioned him going to the Texans at 25. I also really like him to the I believe the Broncos draft at 20. That's right, 20 sounds right to me. 22, I don't know, somewhere in that ballpark. I would love that. I would have said Steelers until the draft, or until the DK Metcalf trade came, and I'm kind of out on that, obviously. Any team in that range feels really, really likely to give him a very long look, and I think the sky's the limit for this dude. I love a prospect who has unreal upside and from day one, and then has immense growth potential moving forward. All right. So I think the combination of who he's going to be day one, week one as a rookie, and then what he could possibly turn into week one of the third year in his career or something like that. Like it is kind of is crazy to think about how good this dude could be down the line when you look at the starting point he's going to be at from day one. That's a lot of projection, obviously, but I really think there's a very real reality where he could end up being one of the best receivers in the league. And we look back, and wherever he's drafted, we're like, man, how did he fall that far? And the reality is, well, he was a good receiver in college. He was a really, really good prospect. But we all looked at him and said, oh, he has more to give. At least from my perspective, I think he does. I think he has room to grow in a lot of different areas of his game. So that's my take. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps me out a lot. And come back for more draft profile videos, mock drafts, all that good stuff. This is a draft channel, so I'm trying to do the NFL draft 24/7, 365 days a year. And if you're interested in following the journey, subscribe, comment. That really helps out the algorithm a lot. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.